The date is the 22nd of January 2026, and the winter sky over London hangs low and heavy. A suffocating blanket of charcoal gray that seems to mirror the mood inside the Victorian Gothic labyrinth of the Royal Courts of Justice on the Strand. The city is cold, damp, and buzzing with the electric, nervous tension that only a royal scandal can generate. But this is not the scandal of the past, filled with whispered rumors behind velvet curtains and leaked diary entries hidden in safe deposit boxes. This is a scandal playing out in high-definition legal transcripts under the brutal, unforgiving fluorescent lights of a modern courtroom, where every stutter, every bead of sweat, and every contradiction is recorded for posterity. In the wake of escalating drama, sensational accusations, and one of the most emotionally charged public testimonies in recent memory, Buckingham Palace has done the unthinkable. They have broken their silence. But they have not done so to defend nor to explain, nor to offer the olive branch that Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, has seemingly been waiting for with bated breath. Instead, they have issued a statement of absolute, cold, institutional severance. Delivered late in the afternoon by the palace's Secretary of Communications, a man known for his discretion and his inability to be rattled, and authorized directly by King Charles III and Anne, Princess Royal, the message marks the formal activation of what insiders are now calling the Firewall Strategy. The statement was brief, devoid of the flowery language often associated with royal correspondence, and devastating in its clarity. It read that the Crown does not participate in disputes born of personal grievance. It stated unequivocally that the royal household acknowledges no involvement in the proceedings currently before the High Court of Justice of England and Wales, and will not be drawn into commentary regarding internal family matters when they are weaponized in public forums. This was not merely a press release. It was a line drawn in the sand, a boundary fortified by centuries of tradition and the harsh lessons of recent history. It signaled that the days of the palace, acting as a silent shock absorber for the Sussex's legal crusades, were over. It was the moment the institution decided to save itself by cutting off the limb that was dragging it down. To understand the magnitude of this moment, one must look away from the head of state, who is currently managing his own health battles with a quiet dignity, and toward the architect of this new, steel-hardened approach, the Princess Royal. Known for her directness, her legendary work ethic, and her unshakable loyalty to protocol, the Princess Royal has quietly emerged as the silent general of the royal family during this crisis. While Charles manages the state and William, Prince of Wales, manages the future, Anne manages the discipline. In a supplementary briefing held behind the closed doors of James's palace, Anne reportedly laid out the ethical framework that would guide the monarchy through this turbulence. She told senior aides that the crown serves the nation, not itself, and that they do not litigate their values nor outsource their sense of responsibility to courtrooms or tabloids. Her words carried the force of a final verdict, responding implicitly to Harry's courtroom claims that his brother and sister-in-law had actively obstructed his pursuit of justice. Anne's position was clear and uncompromising. The monarchy would not be dragged into a family soap opera disguised as a civil litigation battle. Her philosophy was encapsulated in a brief off-the-record comment to select journalists that has since become the rallying cry for the institution and a viral sensation online. She simply said that her mother taught them to serve, not to sue. That single sentence, delivered with the dry wit and steeliness Anne is famous for, dismantled the moral foundation of Harry's lawsuit more effectively than any legal argument could. It highlighted the fundamental divergence between the working royals, who view silence as a strength and duty as a privilege, and Prince Harry, who views silence as a betrayal and duty as a burden. Anne's intervention was not just about strategy. It was about defining the soul of the monarchy for the next generation, ensuring that the ethos of Queen Elizabeth II did not die with her. While the palace fortified its walls with silence and protocol, the scene inside the business and property courts was one of slow-motion collapse. Prince Harry stood in the witness box, alone, attempting to recast a deep personal narrative of hurt and betrayal into a legal case of national significance. He looked tired, his face drawn, the defiance of his earlier years replaced by a brittle anxiety that seemed to vibrate through the room. What began as a crusade for privacy and a reckoning for the British press turned into a spectacle of contradiction and humiliation. Under cross-examination, the Duke of Sussex struggled to provide the concrete proof that a court of law demands. He spoke of a culture of intrusion, of feelings of paranoia, and of a general sense of being hunted. He spoke of his distress, his trauma, and his belief that he was the victim of a grand conspiracy orchestrated by faceless editors. But when pressed for dates, times, specific names, and specific evidence of illegal information gathering, his answers grew vague, relying on assumptions rather than facts, and feelings rather than digital forensics. The defense, representing Associated Newspapers Limited, ANL, did not rely on vague feelings. They brought receipts. In a moment that sucked the air out of the courtroom and left the press gallery stunned, the defense counsel presented evidence that directly contradicted Harry's narrative of being a victim of relentless stalking. When Harry accused a specific journalist, Katie Nicholl, of using illegal methods to track his movements and invade his social circle to get stories about his private life, the defense produced an email. It was not an intercepted message or a hacked voicemail. It was an invitation. The email showed Prince Harry inviting that very journalist to a private party at Kensington Palace in 2011. The lawyer's voice rang out across the chamber with a devastating question disguised as a statement. "Harry, you invited me." The implication was catastrophic for Harry's credibility. It destroyed the binary narrative of the evil press versus the innocent prince. It painted a picture of a man who was not merely hunted, but who was a willing player in the media game when it suited his purposes. It suggested that his outrage was retrospective, applied to events that, at the time, were mutually beneficial transactions between a celebrity prince and the reporters covering him. He drank with them, he laughed with them, he used them to boost his profile as the fun prince, and now he wanted to send them to jail for knowing the things he told them. This courtroom revelation humanized the journalist he sought to demonize and cast Harry as a hypocrite, who changed the rules of engagement only after he had left the field. The defense also dismantled his claims against Rebecca English, another royal correspondent. Harry claimed she had illegally obtained flight details for his then-girlfriend Chelsea Davy, using the dark arts of blagging pretexting. The defense proved that English had simply called the airline and asked, a standard journalistic practice that falls far short of criminal hacking under the Data Protection Act. Over and over, the defense peeled back the layers of Harry's truth to reveal a misunderstanding of how the world works. They showed that what Harry called surveillance was often just observation, and what he called illegal was often just inconvenient. The legal team he had hired, sensing the shifting tides, had already begun to jump ship. Key members of his counsel resigned weeks before the trial, a move legal analysts call a noisy exit, signaling a lack of faith in the client's case and a desire to avoid professional embarrassment. Facing this reputational disaster, the palace realized that silence was no longer enough. They needed separation. This led to the invocation of Article 9 of the Royal Household Charter on Public Conduct, a rarely cited guideline that allows the family to formally declare non-association with private legal matters, regardless of bloodline. By invoking this protocol, the palace essentially declared that Harry is on his own. He has no institutional immunity, no royal protection from subpoenas, and no network of sources close to the palace working to spin the story in his favor. Prince William's refusal to help Harry find new legal counsel, a grievance Harry aired in open court with bitterness, was revealed not as an act of petty spite, but as a necessary adherence to this protocol. To intervene, even to offer a name, would be to endorse the lawsuit and drag the crown into the mire. The palace chose neutrality over brotherhood, a decision that underscores the existential threat they believe Harry's actions pose to the stability of the monarchy. Perhaps the only thing more conspicuous than the palace's statement was the absence of the one person who had been Harry's partner in every previous battle. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, was nowhere to be seen. Her complete withdrawal from the proceedings, no statement, no appearance, no affidavit, No hand-holding on the court steps became one of the most scrutinized silences in modern royal memory. Documents submitted into evidence confirmed that as early as mid-2021, Meghan had been a central architect of the couple's legal strategy. Her name appeared on over 113 internal emails related to media claims, press responses, and potential litigation angles. She was, by every metric, an active co-strategist in the war against the tabloids. She had encouraged the audits, approved the lawyers, and helped craft the narrative of persecution that fueled the case. Yet, as the legal process escalated and the cross-examination turned brutal, she vanished from the frame. Sources close to the Archwell Foundation confirmed that Meghan had opted out of any official participation, citing long-term brand preservation and emotional boundary setting. A leaked internal memo advised against direct public involvement in any litigation that might result in reputational regression or narrative contamination. In plain English, she knew the case was a loser, and she refused to let the mud splatter onto her rebranding efforts. She handed Harry the sword, pointed him at the dragon, and then stayed behind in the castle while he walked onto the battlefield alone. Public opinion noticed this strategic abandonment. Polling conducted by YouGov showed that a vast majority of the British public believed her absence undermined their joint credibility. It fueled the perception that Harry was being left to carry the emotional weight of a battle they had started together. Critics argued that if she truly believed in the cause, she would be there to testify to the harm the press had caused her. Her absence suggested that she was more concerned with her future prospects in Hollywood than with her husband's present struggle in London. While Harry was being grilled on the stand, wiping sweat from his brow, Meghan was reportedly in Montecito, finalizing the launch of a new lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, focusing on jams, linens, and soft focus, living a stark contrast to the gritty, angry reality her husband was enduring across the Atlantic. While Harry sat in the witness box, facing the dismantling of his past, Prince William and Princess Catherine were executing a masterclass in counter-programming. They were in Aberdeen, Scotland, miles away from the legal drama, visiting the Royal Aberdeen Children's Hospital Pediatric Neurology Unit and unveiling a new public health fund. The scene could not have been more different. Where the courtroom was filled with tension, sharp words, and the reliving of old traumas, the hospital corridors echoed with applause, quiet gratitude, and the focus on the future. Royal aides confirmed that the couple's schedule was intentionally left untouched, despite the rising media pressure to comment on the trial. To cancel or reschedule would have signaled engagement with Harry's narrative, and that was exactly what they refused to do. This was the show-don't-tell strategy in action. While Harry relitigated relationships and settled scores from a decade ago, the Wileses were building a nation's future. They offered no defense because their actions were the defense. On January 23, the couple presided over the Royal Foundation Center for Early Childhood Summit, where Catherine delivered a keynote speech on childhood development and emotional resilience. Her words, though focused on children, seemed to carry a layered meaning relevant to the spectacle unfolding in London. She spoke of how children learn not by being told, but by what they see modeled strength, steadiness, and empathy. It was a subtle but powerful message. This is what leadership looks like. It is about showing up when it is hard, about serving others rather than serving oneself. It was a silent rebuke to the man sitting in the High Court, focused entirely on his own pain. The visual contrast was devastating for the Sussex brand. On one split screen, you had Harry, angry, red-faced, arguing about text messages from 2005. On the other, you had Catherine, radiant, composed, holding the hand of a sick child or laughing with a nurse. One looked like the past, the other looked like the future. One looked like a grievance, the other looked like a duty. The public verdict was swift and measurable. In the court of public opinion, the jury had already returned its findings. Polling conducted after Harry's testimony revealed a dramatic swing in perception. Princess Catherine's approval ratings hit record highs, nearing 80%, while Prince William followed closely behind. In contrast, Prince Harry's numbers plummeted to new lows. with only a small fraction of the public viewing him favorably. Meghan's numbers were even lower, dipping into single digits in some demographics. The British public had chosen their side, and they had chosen the side of service. The financial reality of the courtroom failure began to hit home as well. The lawsuit, which Harry had framed as a moral crusade, was rapidly becoming a financial sinkhole. On January 26, Harry's legal team filed a motion to amend their original claim, significantly reducing the total pecuniary damages sought from over £30 million to just under £19 million. They formally dropped the breach of confidence tort, a tacit admission that the case was weaker than they had initially projected. This retreat was not just a legal maneuver, it was a financial necessity. The burn rate of the Sussex lifestyle, the security, the mortgage, the private jets, the PR teams combined with the drying up of commercial deals like Spotify, Technology SA, meant that Harry could not afford a total loss. Under English defamation law, the loser pays the winner's legal costs. If Harry loses, he faces a bill that could run into the millions, not including his own lawyer's fees. Legal experts predicted that even if he won a symbolic victory, the legal fees would dwarf any payout, leaving him in a hole of his own making. The lawsuit, meant to be a revenue stream of justice, was turning into a money pit that threatened to bankrupt him. The reduction in damages sought was a desperate attempt to limit the liability, a signal that the bravado of the opening statements had been replaced by the cold math of the balance sheet. It raised the terrifying prospect that Harry might be fighting for a principal he can no longer afford. There is also the matter of the other claimants. Harry is not the only one suing Associated Newspapers Limited. He is part of a group that includes Sir Elton John, Elizabeth Hurley, and Sadie Frost. However, there is a growing sense in London that Harry has become the useful idiot for the class action group. While the other celebrities have largely stayed in the background, allowing their lawyers to do the talking, Harry has thrust himself into the spotlight, taking the hits and absorbing the cross-examination. Insiders suggest that the other claimants are happy to let Harry draw the fire, using his royal status to amplify the case while protecting their own reputations. Harry, driven by his obsession with the press, failed to see that he was being used as a battering ram by people who had much less to lose than he did. The legal collapse also has implications for Harry's other major battle, his fight for police protection in the UK. The RAVEC, Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures case, in which Harry sued the Home Office of the United Kingdom for removing his automatic police security, relies heavily on the idea that he is under a unique and unprecedented threat level. However, his credibility in the High Court damages his standing in other legal arenas. If a judge finds that he exaggerated claims of intrusion or misrepresented facts in the privacy trial, it weakens his testimony in the security trial. The government's lawyers will undoubtedly use any finding of dishonesty or exaggeration against him, arguing that his perception of risk is flawed. By losing the battle for privacy, he may have inadvertently lost the battle for security. In Hollywood, the reaction to the trial has been equally chilly. The industry runs on relationships and risk management. Major production companies and streaming services are wary of talent that is litigious. The Harry and Meghan brand is now synonymous with lawsuits, non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, and conflict. Executives at William Morris Endeavor, WME, the agency representing Meghan, are reportedly frustrated. They are trying to build a lifestyle brand to sell joy and aspiration. A husband who is constantly in court, fighting angry battles about the past, is a drag on that brand. It scares off advertisers. It makes the couple look toxic. The Hollywood freeze is real. Invites to the Academy Awards and the Met Gala are drying up because no one wants to be deposed in a future lawsuit just for having dinner with the Sussexes. The psychological toll on Harry was visible to everyone in the courtroom. Court sketch artists and journalists repeatedly noted his isolation. He entered through side doors, avoided eye contact with the press gallery, and seemed physically diminished by the proceedings. He looked smaller, hunched over, the weight of the world on his shoulders. During breaks, he was seen checking his phone constantly, perhaps looking for a message of support that never came. When a reporter shouted a question about where Meghan was, he did not respond, but his jaw tightened and he looked away. Later, during questioning about financial losses, he muttered under his breath that it wasn't her story to finish. That single sentence, caught by a microphone, spread like wildfire, triggering speculation that the rift between the couple was deepening as the pressure mounted. It suggested a resentment that he was the one left holding the bag for a strategy she had helped design. Meghan, meanwhile, was reportedly in the final stages of preparing a complete brand relaunch set to debut in the spring of 2026. This repositioning was described by insiders as Meghan 2, a version of her public persona that intentionally excluded royal references, titles, or British media commentary. It was focused on wellness, empowerment, and children's content, a clean break from the trauma brand that Harry was currently litigating. Her projects included a streaming platform collaboration on emotional literacy and a fashion capsule with a major European label. Notably absent from all promotional materials was her husband. Whether intentional or not, Meghan's silence left Harry vulnerable to press framing and public judgment without the buffer of their usual united front aesthetic. It seemed she was building a lifeboat for one, leaving Harry to go down with the ship of their previous narrative. As the trial moved toward its closing arguments, one truth stood uncontested. Prince Harry's lawsuit had failed to fracture the monarchy. Instead, it had clarified its core. By forcing the institution to define its boundaries, Harry had inadvertently strengthened it. The royal family appeared more united, more focused, and more certain of its future than it had in years. The Firewall Strategy had worked. The contagion of the Sussex drama had been contained outside the palace gates. The crown had demonstrated that it could survive the defection of a prince, provided it stuck to its principles. The late Queen's mantra of never complain, never explain had evolved into serve, don't sue, and it was winning the war of public opinion. The final chapter of this saga is not merely the legal conclusion of a defamation trial. It is a defining referendum on duty versus disruption. Harry came seeking justice, but he brought emotion instead of evidence. When asked to prove the harm, all he could point to was resentment. The monarchy, by contrast, pointed to its work. The Princess Royal was right. You cannot litigate your way to peace, and you cannot sue your way to popularity. Legacy isn't claimed through lawsuits. It is lived in silence, in duty, and in an unshakable presence. The contrast between Harry's noise and the family's silence became the defining image of the era. As Harry walked out of the High Court on the final day, flanked by security but emotionally alone, he looked less like a warrior and more like a man who had realized, too late, that he was fighting a war no one else was interested in. The crown moves on, its schedule filled with hospital visits, state dinners, and charity galas. Harry stays behind, left with his truth but no platform, his legal bills, and the echoing silence of a family that has finally learned how to say goodbye. The firewall held. The institution is safe. And the prince who wanted to burn it down is left standing in the ashes of his own making, clutching a verdict that may vindicate his anger, but will never restore his peace. The serve, not sue philosophy has become the unofficial motto of the new era. It is a rejection of the celebrity culture that demands constant validation and a return to the stoic values that define the Queen's reign. William and Catherine have embodied this shift, proving that in the long game of history, dignity always outlasts drama. The public has rallied around them not because they are exciting, but because they are reliable. In a world of chaos, they offer continuity. Harry, in his chaotic pursuit of freedom, has offered only confusion. He has become a cautionary tale, a reminder that the grass is not always greener on the other side of the palace walls, especially when you have to pay for the landscaping yourself. Ultimately, the trial served as a mirror. It reflected the diminished state of the Sussex brand and the enduring resilience of the crown. It showed that while Harry could command headlines, he could not command respect. The legal loss, when it comes, will just be the receipt for a transaction that was made years ago, the trade of duty for fame. The receipt shows that the cost was too high and the goods were damaged. The king has closed the account. The Princess Royal has locked the door. And the Prince of Wales has turned his face toward the future, leaving his brother to argue with the ghosts of the past. The separation is complete, the firewall is impenetrable, and the monarchy remains as ever the only winner in the Game of Thrones. As night falls on London, the lights of Buckingham Palace shine bright, a beacon of stability in a shifting world, while the lights in Montecito flicker, uncertain and alone, in the shadow of a legal defeat that may cost them everything. The silence from the palace is not an absence of sound, it is the presence of power, a power that has decided that the time for tolerating rebellion is over. The firewall is up, and there is no getting through it.